Most people believe motivation is something you wait for. You wake up hoping to feel inspired, hoping the energy will magically appear. But psychology tells us something powerful and different. Motivation doesn't create action. Action creates motivation. The moment you move your body, change your focus, or make a decision, your brain responds. Emotion follows motion. That means you don't need to feel ready. You don't need confidence. You don't need permission. You just need to take the first small step. Your brain is designed to reward progress, not perfection. When you take action, any action, your nervous system shifts. Your posture changes, your breathing deepens, your focus sharpens, chemistry changes. And suddenly, what felt heavy starts to feel possible. Another secret is this. What you focus on determines how you feel. If you focus on problems, you feel drained. If you focus on meaning, growth, and solutions, energy rises. Motivation is not about avoiding pain. It's about linking action to a powerful purpose. When your why is strong, discipline becomes easier. Finally, motivation is sustained by identity. When you stop asking, how do I stay motivated, and start declaring, this is who I am, everything shifts. You don't negotiate with your identity. You act in alignment with it. You become someone who shows up even when it's uncomfortable. So if you want unlimited motivation throughout the day, don't wait for it. Create it. Move first. Focus intentionally. Act as the person you decide to be. Motivation will follow. Most people wait for motivation to appear before they act. They tell themselves they will start when they feel confident, inspired, energized, or ready. But this way of thinking traps millions of people in hesitation and procrastination. Psychology shows that motivation is not a prerequisite for action, it is a consequence of it. Action comes first. Motivation follows. When you understand this, you stop being a victim of your moods and start becoming the driver of your life. The human brain is designed to respond to movement. When you stay still both physically and mentally, the brain interprets it as a signal that nothing important is happening. Energy remains low, focus scatters, doubt grows louder. But the moment you take action, any action, the brain shifts into engagement mode. Neural circuits associated with attention, reward, and problem-solving activate. Even a small step sends a powerful message to the brain, this matters. That message alone begins to generate motivation. Think about how often motivation suddenly appears after you've already started something. You don't feel like exercising. But once you begin moving, energy increases. You don't feel like working, but once you open the laptop and write the first sentence, momentum builds. This is not coincidence, this is biology. Action stimulates dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with drive and reward. Dopamine is not released when you think about doing something, it is released when you move toward it. That chemical shift is what people mistakenly call finding motivation. Waiting to feel motivated is dangerous because emotions are unstable. They change based on sleep, stress, environment, and past experiences. If your success depends on a feeling, your progress will always be inconsistent. But if your success depends on action, you regain control. You don't need to feel good to do good work. You do the work, and the good feelings arrive later as a byproduct. Another reason action creates motivation is that it reduces uncertainty. The brain hates the unknown. When you sit still and overthink, your mind fills the gaps with fear, worst-case scenarios, and self-doubt. The task feels bigger, heavier, and more overwhelming than it really is. Action cuts through this illusion. When you take the first step, the brain receives real information instead of imagined threats. Clarity replaces confusion. Fear shrinks because reality is almost always less threatening than what the mind invents. Action also builds evidence. Confidence is not something you think your way into, it is something you prove to yourself through behavior. Every small action is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you act, you collect proof that you are capable, disciplined, and resilient. That proof fuels motivation far more effectively than positive thinking ever could. Motivation grows when you see yourself making progress, even if that progress is imperfect. Many people believe they need big actions to feel motivated, but this is another misconception. The brain responds strongly to small wins. Tiny actions create momentum because they are easy to start and hard to fail. Making your bed, writing one paragraph, doing 5 minutes of movement, these actions signal progress. Progress is addictive. Once momentum begins, stopping feels harder than continuing. That is why the hardest part is always the beginning. Action also shifts identity. When you act, you stop asking, how do I feel? And start answering, what do I do? This changes the internal dialogue from emotional to intentional. Instead of negotiating with excuses, you move into execution mode. Over time, repeated action reshapes how you see yourself. You no longer see yourself as someone who waits for motivation. You become someone who creates it. Identity-driven action is one of the most powerful psychological forces available to humans. Importantly, action does not mean forcing yourself into extreme effort or burnout. It means movement, engagement, participation. Even imperfect action works. In fact, imperfect action works better than perfect inaction. The brain rewards effort and direction, not flawlessness. When you allow yourself to start messy, you remove pressure. And pressure is one of the biggest killers of motivation. Another hidden benefit of action is emotional regulation. Emotions are not solved by thinking, they are processed through movement. Anxiety, boredom, and lack of motivation are often forms of trapped energy. Action releases that energy. Walking, organizing, creating, building, these behaviors calm the nervous system and restore a sense of control. When control increases, motivation naturally rises. Action also trains your brain to trust you. Every time you say you will do something and then do it, you strengthen self-trust. When you break promises to yourself by waiting or avoiding, self-trust erodes and motivation drops. The brain learns patterns quickly. If it learns that you act regardless of mood, it stops resisting. Motivation becomes easier because resistance disappears. Over time, the relationship reverses completely. Instead of action chasing motivation, motivation starts chasing action. You feel energized because you are already moving. You feel inspired because you are already engaged. This is how high performers operate. They do not feel motivated all the time. They act consistently, and motivation shows up to support the behavior. Understanding that action creates motivation removes excuses. You no longer say, I'm not motivated. You say, I haven't started yet. And starting is always within your control. This realization is freeing. It puts power back in your hands. Motivation stops being a mystery and becomes a tool. In the end, the secret is simple but demanding. Move first. Do not wait for the perfect feeling, the perfect moment, or the perfect plan. Take a step, then another. Let action lead and let motivation follow. When you live this way, motivation stops being something you chase all day and becomes something you generate on demand. Your focus is the lens through which you experience life. Whatever you consistently direct your attention toward becomes amplified in your emotional world. This is not philosophy. It is psychology and neuroscience working together. The brain cannot process everything at once, so it filters reality based on what you choose to focus on. That filter determines your emotional state, your energy level, and ultimately your motivation. Change your focus and you change how you feel. Most people allow their focus to drift unconsciously. They replay past mistakes, worry about future problems, and obsess over things they cannot control. This pattern drains emotional energy because the brain interprets these thoughts as threats. When the mind focuses on problems without solutions, the stress response activates. Cortisol rises, muscles tense. Breathing becomes shallow, and motivation drops. The body prepares for danger, not progress. This is why constant worry feels exhausting. Even when you haven't done anything physically demanding, focus works like a spotlight. When you shine it on what's wrong, everything feels heavy. When you shine it on what's meaningful, everything feels lighter. Two people can be in the same situation and feel completely different emotions based solely on what they are focusing on. One focuses on loss and feels defeated. The other focuses on lessons and feels empowered. The external reality hasn't changed, but the emotional experience has shifted entirely. The brain is especially sensitive to questions. Whatever questions you repeatedly ask yourself shape your focus automatically. Questions like, why is this so hard? Or why does this always happen to me? Force the brain to search for negative evidence. The brain is efficient, so it will always find answers, even if those answers are distorted. On the other hand, questions like, what can I control right now? Or what is this teaching me? Redirect focus towards solutions and growth. The emotional shift happens almost instantly because the brain has been given a different task. Focus also determines meaning, and meaning fuels emotional energy. Humans can tolerate pain, effort, and discomfort when those experiences are connected to purpose. But the same effort feels unbearable when it feels pointless. When you focus on why something matters. how it connects to your values, your future, or the people you care about, your emotional energy increases. Effort stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like investment. Another powerful aspect of focus is that it influences perception of time and difficulty. When you focus on how long a task will take or how hard it feels, motivation drops. The task feels endless. But when you focus on the next small step, the brain feels capable. Emotional energy rises because the challenge feels manageable. This is why breaking tasks into smaller actions is not just a productivity strategy, but an emotional one. Focus also shapes self-image. If your attention is constantly on your flaws, mistakes, and limitations, your emotional state will reflect shame and frustration. But if your focus includes effort, progress, and improvement, even small ones, your emotional state shifts toward pride and confidence. This does not mean ignoring weaknesses. It means not allowing them to dominate your mental landscape. Emotional balance comes from a fair focus, not a negative obsession. Your environment plays a major role in controlling focus, often without your awareness. News, social media, conversations, and even physical clutter compete for your attention. When your focus is constantly pulled toward comparison, outrage, or distraction, emotional energy leaks away. This is why protecting your focus is essential. What you allow into your mind repeatedly becomes the emotional background of your life. Focus also affects physiology. When you focus on stress, the body tightens. When you focus on gratitude, opportunity, or appreciation, the body relaxes. Breathing slows, posture improves, and energy becomes more available. This is why practices like gratitude are not just emotional habits, but physical ones. They train the nervous system to operate from a state of resourcefulness instead of survival. Importantly, focus does not mean pretending everything is positive. It means choosing what is useful. Ignoring reality weakens you, but selective focus strengthens you. You can acknowledge a problem without living inside it. You can see a setback without turning it into an identity. Emotional energy comes from focusing on what moves you forward, not from denying what holds you back. One of the most empowering realizations is that focus is trainable. Just like a muscle, attention becomes stronger with practice. At first, redirecting focus feels unnatural because the brain is used to old patterns, but with repetition, new focus becomes automatic. Over time, your emotional baseline changes. You feel more stable, more energized, and more motivated, not because life became easier, but because your focus became stronger. When you consistently focus on progress, meaning, and possibility, your emotional energy becomes renewable. Motivation stops depending on external circumstances and starts coming from within. You are no longer at the mercy of events, you are guided by intention. This is the power of focus. It doesn't change the world around you, but it completely transforms how you experience it. Most people believe willpower is the key to success. They think if they could just try harder, push more, or discipline themselves better, they would finally be consistent. But willpower is unreliable. It gets tired, it fluctuates with stress, hunger, sleep, and emotion. Identity, on the other hand, is stable. Identity is the internal story you tell yourself about who you are. And that story silently governs your behavior far more powerfully than motivation or willpower ever could. Every action you take is an expression of identity. You don't wake up every morning and debate whether you should act like yourself. You simply do. A person who sees themselves as punctual doesn't need willpower to be on time. A person who sees themselves as a learner doesn't need motivation to study. A person who sees themselves as responsible doesn't argue with themselves about keeping promises. They act in alignment with who they believe they are. This is why identity is stronger than willpower. When people rely on willpower, they turn every decision into a battle. Should I work or rest? Should I eat healthy or cheat? Should I continue or quit? Each decision drains mental energy. Over time, decision fatigue sets in and willpower collapses. But when behavior is identity-based, there is no debate. The decision is already made. You act not because you feel like it, but because this is who I am. Identity works through consistency. The brain seeks alignment between self-image and behavior. When your actions match your identity, the brain feels calm and coherent. When they don't, discomfort arises. This discomfort is not punishment, it is a signal. People often try to escape that discomfort through excuses or rationalization. But when identity is clear and intentional, the discomfort pushes you back into alignment automatically. Many people unknowingly carry identities formed by past failures. They label themselves as lazy, inconsistent, bad at discipline, or unlucky. Once these identities are accepted, behavior follows, not because the labels are true, but because the brain tries to remain consistent with them. This is why changing behavior without changing identity is exhausting. You are fighting against your own self-concept. Identity change does not begin with affirmations, it begins with actions. Small, repeated behaviors rewrite identity over time. Every time you act in alignment with the person you want to become, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the new one. You don't need to fully believe the new identity at first. The brain updates beliefs based on evidence, and behavior is the strongest evidence there is. Language plays a critical role in identity. The words you use internally shape how you see yourself. Saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined," keeps discipline outside of you. Saying, "I am disciplined," brings it into your identity. This doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means committing to the standard you are building. Even when you fall short, identity-based language helps you recover faster because you see mistakes as temporary, not defining. Identity also simplifies life. When your values and identity are clear, you waste less energy on internal conflict. You don't chase every opportunity or react to every distraction. You act according to principle. This creates emotional stability and long-term motivation because your actions are grounded in meaning, not mood. One of the most powerful shifts happens when identity is linked to standards instead of outcomes. Outcomes fluctuate and depend on many factors. Standards are internal and controllable. When you define yourself as someone who shows up, someone who gives effort, someone who finishes what they start, success becomes inevitable over time. Even setbacks reinforce identity because you continue acting in alignment despite difficulty. Identity is reinforced socially as well. When you see yourself a certain way, you naturally seek environments and people that reflect that identity. This creates positive feedback loops. Your behavior influences your environment, and your environment reinforces your behavior. Willpower alone cannot create this momentum. Identity does it effortlessly. Importantly, identity does not mean rigidity. Strong identity is not about ego or perfection. It is about commitment. You can adapt strategies, change goals, and evolve beliefs while staying true to who you are becoming. Identity gives you a compass, not a cage. When challenges arise, willpower asks, "Can I push through this?" Identity asks, "What would someone like me do?" That question changes everything. It shifts focus from emotion to character, from short-term comfort to long-term integrity. And integrity generates a quiet, durable form of motivation that doesn't fade when things get hard. Over time, identity-based living transforms effort into habit and habit into character. Motivation becomes less necessary because action becomes automatic. You don't rely on bursts of energy or inspiration. You rely on alignment. And alignment is powerful. In the end, willpower is a tool you use occasionally. Identity is a foundation you stand on every day. When you decide who you are and back it up with action, motivation stops being something you chase and becomes something you express.